Hi guys, it's Ms. Miner. And, let me get to the first. Today we are going to be working on solving equations. And we want to solve equations that have distributing and combining like terms. Okay, so that's our ultimate goal for this lesson. We want to be able to solve some equations that have some distributing and some combining that we have to do before we can solve them. So we're just practicing solving equations, but we might have to simplify a little bit before we can do the actual solving part. So remember, here's some rules for solving expressions and equations, okay? The first thing that we want to do is we want to remember this little heart reminds me that I'm going to share the love. That means I'm going to distribute using multiplication, okay? And then remember, family reunion is Ms. Miner's way of just helping you remember that we're going to combine like terms. And remember, family reunion, because when I combine like terms, they have to have the same last name. So they have to have kind of like the same variable. And then if I have any x's that I need to move, I'm going to move them first. But that we're going to save that one. Right now, we're going to just be working with variables on one side of the equal sign. I believe our next lesson, we will start working with variables on both sides. So if I needed to move an x from one side of the equal sign to the other, I would do it next, okay? But for right now, we're going to move the number that's not connected to the variable first, and then we're going to move the number that's connected. So let's see how we use these rules to solve a problem, okay? So remember, the first thing we wanted to do, let me see if I just want to move this up just a little bit here. Oh, and I lost my little heartsies that were so cute. Let's move those back up so we can remember to share the love here. Okay. I just need to move those out of the way because I'm going to write those steps down here. Remember, I'm going to share the love. The first thing I'm going to do is share the love and family reunion. So I'm going to distribute, I'm going to combine like terms. These little symbols are just kind of Ms. Miner's way of reminding you to do those things first. That's simplifying. That's step one. And then we're going to go ahead and solve. And we're going to do that by getting the x by itself. Solving means I want to use inverse operations to get x by itself. So I'm going to start by moving anything that's not connected to my variable. Let's put this as any number not connected to my variable. It's kind of like if you were in my face-to-face class, we did a kind of a hostage demonstration. And so this is kind of like whoever's going to go first, whoever's not connected to the variable, because the variable kind of hangs on to its number. And so the number that's not connected to the variable, we remove first. And if you're not in my face-to-face class, that might not make any sense to you, but I kind of use a little illustration in order to determine which number we get rid of first. And then I'm going to remove the number or the coefficient that is connected to my variable. Okay, so those are the three steps I'm going to use. And we're going to start by solving this equation that's right up here. So remember, the first thing that I do is share the love. And the way that I do that is I look for the term that is right out in front of my parentheses. And in this case, it's a -6. And the key here is always remembering to bring the sign along. And that's why I kind of like share the love, because I actually draw a little heart and I write a -6 above each of my terms inside my parentheses. And then I'm looking right at the negatives, and I'm looking right at the number that it's multiplying inside here, or letter in this case, right? Inside here, I have a D and a -4, and so I'm multiplying by each of those terms inside my parentheses. And so I like share the love. I like thinking about it because that -6 is just being shared to each of those terms inside of the parentheses. Or in this case, it's really multiplying, right? By sharing, I mean multiplying each of the terms inside the parentheses. And so I'm going to end up with negative 6, oh, sorry, I can't touch and write at the same time. Negative 6D plus 24. Because here I have a negative, and here I have a negative. And remember, two negatives together make a positive. All right. And then the last thing I just do is bring down the 66. So I share the love first, and then I look and see, is there any family reunion that needs to happen here? Can I combine any like terms? And in this problem, there's not any like terms that I can connect. So we're done with step 1. So I can look at the next thing. And remember, my equal sign is kind of like a balance. I always have to keep my equation equal. And so right now it's equal. It's kind of like sitting on this balance or this scale, like, and not one side or the other is tipped. But I want to take off some weight from one side. That means I have to rebalance it to the other side. So I am going to move the number that is not connected to my variable. So looking at this expression on this side of my equation, I am looking for the number that's not connected to my variable. And that number is this 24 right here. The negative 6 is connected to the variable I'm interested in. When I solve an equation, my whole goal is to get that variable by itself and then come up with a number that it's equal to. And so I have to get rid of kind of like saying the weight that is attached to it. And right now I have added 24 to my variable over here. And so I want to get rid of that. And the way that I do that is I use inverse operations. And let me just add that here by inverse or opposite operations. This happens to be an add 24 or a positive 24. So I want to go ahead and subtract 24. Oops, sorry. In order to remove that from my equation on this side, my expression on this side. But remember, I always have to keep this equation equal. And so if I take 24 off of this left-hand side, I also have to take 24 off of the right-hand side because that rebalances the scale. That keeps my equation equal to each other. Okay, so when I do that, I end up with a positive 24 minus 24, and that goes to 0. So that's going to go away because if I add 0, right, to negative 6D, then all I have is negative 6D. So what I have left over here is negative 6D. And on this side, I have 42. Then I can go ahead and remove the number. So once I remove the number that's not connected to my variable, I can go ahead and remove the number that is connected to my variable. And the way that I'm going to do that is, again, with inverse operations. This operation, however, you'll notice I have a lot of students who tell me, Ms. Miner, this is a minus 6, so I must need to add 6. But remember, when I have a number and a letter right next to each other with nothing in between, that's actually multiplying. So this negative 6 is multiplying D, because that minus would need to be in between the 6 and the D for it to be subtracting. And it's not in between. There's nothing in between, and so this is multiplication. So we're going to use division to undo the multiplication that's happening here. And if I divide the left hand by negative 6, I need to divide the right hand side by negative 6. When I divide by 6 over here on the left hand side, this negative 6 divides and gives me 1D, right? Gives me 1D over here. Well, remember, 1 times D is just D. It's the same thing. And so the only thing I have left over here, we say they cancel each other out. And really, the only thing I have over here is left is the D. I have 1D left, okay? And then on the right-hand side, 42 divided by negative 6 gives me negative 7. And now I know what D is equal to. That is my answer or my result that I'm looking for. Okay, so we're just practicing solving equations. Some of this should be review from our lesson previously. And so we're just going to keep working with our solving equations, but this time we have to simplify them a little bit in this first step over here. In this first step over here in order to be able to go ahead and solve. So I'm going to take this stuff that's over here now. Let's see. Oh, I don't want to make it bigger. I want to, let's see if I can. Actually, let me just move this guy over here and we'll solve him now. We're going to use these same steps in order to solve this equation now. And I'll mark them off as we go. Okay, so the first thing I always want to do is share the love or distribute, right? Because this guy, he loves all of the stuff inside the parentheses. So I am going to take this 7 that's out in front of my parentheses, and he's going to get shared to each of these terms inside the parentheses. I'm going to do the same thing with this one right here. Anything right next to the parentheses, even if it's just a sign, it gets shared equally inside the parentheses. Whatever term is out in front of the parentheses, that is what is getting distributed. If it helps you, you can put an invisible negative or invisible 1 right here. We don't usually write the 1 because the 1 is kind of just implied, I guess. But if it helps you to see it, distribute a negative 1 here, and then you're that might be less confusing for some people. If that helps you, then use the invisible 1. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is go ahead and do this multiplication that's happening here. I want to distribute these things inside their parentheses. And so I'm going to multiply 7 times 7 and get 49x. And then I'm going to multiply the negative 1 times the 7 and get negative 7. The next thing I'm going to do is multiply the 1 by the negative 1 and get negative 1. And multiply the positive 7x by the negative 1 and get negative 7x. And that all equals negative 8, so I just drop that down. Now I have shared the love. I want to have a family reunion. I want to get everybody with the same last name together. And this is where identifying those terms in an equation is really important, because I want to know that the negatives go with the number directly behind them. If I go through and I break this up into terms, then I can see that the 49 and the x are a term, and the negative 7 is a term, and the negative 1 is a term, and the negative 7x is a term. And that helps me figure out which ones I'm combining. I'm going to combine 49x with negative 7x because they have the same last name. They're both x's. When I do that, sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Okay, when I do that, I get 42x, because 49 x's minus 7 x's gives me 42 x's. And then I'm going to go ahead and combine just my plain integers that I have here and end up with negative 8 for my integer. Remember, this is a party because they have the same sign. And how many are at the party? 7 and 1 combined together are 8. So I have 42x minus 8 equals negative 8 now. And I'm done with the first step because I shared the love, and then I had a family reunion. And so I've simplified this as far as it can go. So now I'm ready to solve. And I'm going to draw my line down, my equal sign. And my goal here is to get x by itself and figure out what number it is equal to. And so I'm going to move the number that's not connected to my variable or get rid of it first. So the next step is I'm going to look for my variable. Here's the number that is connected, right? So I want to save that. That's not what I'm getting rid of first. I'm getting rid of the -8 first. So here again, I have to identify what my terms are so I know what numbers I'm working with, right? Okay, so I'm working with the -8 first. And if you think about your order of operations, if I just go back to this slide here, see this little note right here? I'm kind of doing inverse or reverse PEMDAS when I get to the solving part. I'm working backwards in my order of operations. I'm removing the addition and subtraction first, and then I'm removing the multiplication and division next. And when we get to exponents, then we'll figure out we remove the exponents next, and then we would remove anything that's grouping symbol. So when I'm solving an equation, I'm kind of working backwards in my order of operations. That's another way to think about why I am removing the number that's not connected to the variable first. So maybe that helps you. Maybe that's another thought that might help some of you guys come up with the result here. Okay, so I want to remove the -8 first. Because it's a -8, I'm going to add 8. Oh, not 2. I'm going to add 8 to make it go to 0. And I'm going to add 8 on the other side of my equals sign. -8 plus 8 goes to 0. And 0, there I don't need to put the 0 in here because 0 plus 42x is just 42x. But on this side, you'll notice these two over here, they equal 0 as well. But since I don't have anything else over on this side of the equal sign, I have to put the 0 in as a placeholder. I had this 42x over here, so that is my placeholder on that side. So I didn't have to write the 0 on the left-hand side because it's already taken care of. It was essentially added to the 42x, but we just got 42x left over. But on the right-hand side, I need to enter the 0 in here because I have nothing else over here. That is the placeholder on that side. And then there's a couple of different ways that I can approach this. 42x equals 0. Well, x, the only number it can be, the only number I can multiply 42 by in order to get 0 is 0. So I can kind of figure that one out in my head. But if I'm unsure, just go ahead and do the division right here. Divide by 42, divide by 42 over here. These are going to cancel, and x is going to be equal to 0 divided by 42, which is just 0. Okay, and 0 is a perfectly fine answer for x. X can be the number 0. It's perfectly fine. Okay, all right. Let's try a couple more. Let's try this bottom one first, just because I have some room to work with, and then we'll do the top one. All right. The first thing I want to do is I want to look for any parentheses. That's the first thing in my order of operations. And these parentheses are telling me to distribute or share the love, right? So I'm going to simplify this first. Remember, the first step was share the love and then family reunion. So that's just simplifying. I'm going to share the love in here. And then again, look at what's out in front of here. And this is why, here's my terms, right? This was a positive 3. And then here's my parentheses. And then my next term was a -6. And then here's my parentheses, right? So identifying those terms is really important because I have to know that what I'm sharing over here is a -6. And what I'm sharing over here is a positive 3. And I can put those in just so that they're more visual. But identifying those terms in an equation is really important so I know exactly what it is that I'm distributing or working with. Okay, so I go ahead and do this multiplication, and I get 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times f is 3f, and it's plus because this is a positive answer. And then I want to go ahead and distribute over here, and I'm going to get negative 6 times f is a negative 6f, and then negative 6 times a negative 5 is a positive 30. And then this 7, this is a positive 6, and this 7 is just going to drop down right here. I haven't done anything with that 7 yet, but I will. Equals 52. So once I've done that, then remember I need to do a family reunion. So now I'm going to combine all of the terms together that are alike. And so I combine the positive 3f with the negative 6f, and then I'm going to combine all of my integers together. And here again, I've kind of broken that up into terms that I'm going to work with. So let's first combine all of our integers together. 7 plus 6 gives me 13, and then 13 plus 30 gives me 43. So I just combined 13 plus 30 gives me 43. And now let's go ahead and combine our variables, our terms with our variables in it. I have positive 3 minus 6, that gives me negative 3f. That's a battle. Negatives are going to win by 3. So just thinking about those little things like that can help you. And then that equals 52. Once I have shared the love and family reunion, or simplified everything, right, then I can go ahead and start solving. Step 2 says get rid of any numbers that are not connected to the variable. And so remember, if you have these things in your notes, I'll kind of keep rewriting them for a minute, but I'm not always going to write out the steps every time, but just for you guys to kind of keep seeing. Okay, so the number not connected, here's my terms. Let me break this out into terms again. Here's my first term. Here's my second term. So I have a positive 43 and a negative 3f. Here's another time when it's really good to break those terms up so that I know that this is a negative 3 and this is a positive 43. Then when I do my solving, I know I need to subtract 43 here. Because sometimes this negative can make me think that this is a minus problem, and it might make me want to add 43. But I'm not. I'm working with a positive 43 here. Oh, sorry, I changed that. I'm working with a positive 43 here, so I want to subtract 43 to get rid of it. I'm going to subtract 43 over here as well. This one on the left-hand side is going to go to 0. And 0 minus 3f is just minus 3f left over on that side. On this side, I'm going to have 52 minus 43, which is going to give me 9. Okay, so now I have gotten rid of the number that was not connected to my variable. So I want to go ahead and get rid of the number that is connected to my variable. The number that's connected to my variable in this case is the negative 3. And remember, it's multiplying my variable. The coefficient of my variable is always multiplying. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by negative 3 here, divide by negative 3 over here. These two on the left-hand side will cancel. They'll go to 1. And I want 1f left over, right? This is 1f left over. That's what I want. On this side, 9 divided by negative 3 gives me negative 3. And so now I know that f is equal to the number negative 3. Okay. Let's go ahead and do one more practice problem here. I'm going to let me see if I can get rid of this work really fast. It's the same steps. You guys will see these are the same steps just over and over again. I'm going to do the same thing. I just kind of like keep working through each problem, even though each problem looks different. I really am doing the same thing every time I'm solving a problem. Okay, the first thing I want to do is distribute or share the love. And so I'm going to multiply 1/3 times 6, and I'm going to multiply y by 6. Remember, when I'm multiplying a whole number by a fraction like this, oh, that's a third, I just multiply the top straight across. I can make this into 6/1, and I'm multiplying the bottom as well. So my result here is going to be 6/3. And remember, if I have a fraction like this, 6/3, I can go ahead and do that division and reduce that even more. So when I multiply 1/3 by 6 over here, I'm going to get 6/3, which is just 6 divided by 3, which is 2. So 1/3 times 6 is 2. 6 times a positive y is just positive 6y. And that equals 38. So that's a little trick. Whenever I multiply, this is kind of how I think about when I'm multiplying a whole number times a fraction. I times by the top, and then divide by whatever the bottom number is. So this is, let me make this look even better. Times by the top and divide by the bottom. 6 times 1 divided by 3 equals 2. That's just a little trick that I use quite a lot in math. Multiply the top, just divide by the bottom, in order to help simplify multiplying with fractions. Okay. All right, so once I've done that, I check to see, can I combine any like terms? And I'm just looking either on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. And this one's already simplified. There's no terms that have the same last name. And so I'm done with step 1. I can move on to step 2. Oh, we haven't done step 2 yet. Step 2, I'm going to move the number that's not connected to my variable. So here are my terms, 2 and then 6y. And since this is a positive 2, I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to change colors just so that you can kind of see each step in a different color. I'm going to get rid of it by subtracting 2. In order to keep this equation equal, I also have to subtract 2 from the other side. This one's going to go to 0. I'm going to be left with 6y equals 36. And then I'm done with step 2. I've gotten rid of the number that's not connected to the variable. Step 3 is get rid of the number that is connected to the variable. And remember, this one is multiplication. And so I am going to just get rid of it by doing the opposite thing. I'm going to divide by 6. But if I divide by 6 on the left-hand side, I have to divide by 6 on the right-hand side. These are going to cancel. And I'm going to be left with just the y on this side, and 36 divided by 6 is 6. And once I get to just my variable all by itself equals a number, x equals a number, y equals a number, that's what we're looking for. That's our result we want. Okay. This is that. Yep, we got one more, and then we'll be done with our lesson for today. This one, I'm not going to rewrite the notes. Hopefully you've been writing down all of the steps on your own and that you have them in your notes to reference. So this one, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to identify where the terms are in my equation here so I know what I'm working with. The first thing I want to do is distribute or share the love. So I'm going to share the love, -3 times -3. I always write it above because then I'm looking right at this negative and right at this term that's inside here. Inside the parentheses, I have an x and a -4. And so I'm just going to drop down the 13 when I rewrite. I'm not doing anything with that side just yet. And then I'm going to go ahead and multiply out. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And negative 3 times a negative 4 is a positive 12 minus 8. I just drop that back down to rewrite my problem out. Once I've distributed, what I want to do is combine like terms. Family reunion, right? So here is an integer. Here is an integer. I can combine those because they're on the same side. So I can simplify this a little bit. I'm just going to rewrite the problem. 13 minus 3x is now equal to, or plus 4, sorry, equal to. Negative 13 equals negative 3x plus 4. So all I did was I combined the positive 12 and the negative 8. Step 1 was share the love and family reunion. Once I've done that, step 1 is done. So I can go ahead and start solving my equation. I draw my line, my equals sign, and then I look for the number that's not connected to my variable. In this, I have a number that's connected to my variable. I also have plus 4. So I'm going to get rid of plus 4 by minusing 4. And I want to minus 4 over here to keep it equal. This one's going to go to 0. I end up with a negative 3x on this side. And over on this side, 13 minus 4 is 9. Step 2 is done. I removed the number that was not connected to the variable. So now step 3 is remove the number that is connected to the variable. And that number is multiplying, always multiplying. And so the last step then is divide by the negative 3. Divide by negative 3 to keep it equal. I got to do it one side and on the other side. These are going to cancel. They're going to go to 1 and leave me with just 1x left over here. And on this side, 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3. So we did that one a little bit quicker. We went down through the steps just a little bit quicker. Hopefully, as you do this and you practice, you're going to get a little bit faster every time. You're going to remember those steps as you go through it.